In the previous videos on the tasks of mourning, one thing that I didn't really talk too much about is that of prayer. And that's what I want to address in this video in particular. One of the things that we may not find in secular sources about grieving is the great importance that prayer can bring, of being able to bring all the things that were going on within our hearts to the Lord. So in this video, I just want to point out a few kinds of prayers that can help us to go through the process of mourning. The first form of prayer that I want to point out is praying with the scriptures, and in particular with the Psalms. You see, within the 150 Psalms, there's quite a few of the Psalms that are actually laments that are designed to express sorrow for certain difficulties that are being gone through, as well as trust in God. There's actually various kinds of laments as well. There's community laments, individual laments. The penitential psalms as well as the imprecatory psalms are also related to this as well. So what are each of these? So if you remember, the psalms are from the Old Testament, and so they're being expressed within the context of the life of Israel, of the chosen people. And so first, the community laments are psalms that expresses the group of people, the whole nation, as facing a great difficulty, perhaps a natural disaster, some kind of oppression, being attacked by an enemy, and they approach God together as a community, expressing their sorrow or distress and asking God for their intervention. So perhaps this could be something we can pray together as a community. Then there's individual laments. Individual laments is an expression of something of an individual person. Something has gone terribly wrong, whether it's sickness or rejection, maybe mistreatment, or some kind of great loss. And out of their anguish comes a prayer for help, trusting that God will do something. It's really an expression that we trust God enough to cry out to Him in that way. And so in our own sorrows and our own frustrations, we can call out to God in this kind of lament. Then there's the penitential psalms. And this is the case in which someone is crying out in sorrow to God based upon their own sinfulness, that they are feeling guilt for what they have done and are hurting inside. And so in this case, the enemy is themselves. And so the person needs God's loving mercy. And so asking for His mercy is expressed in these psalms and a trust in God's ability to restore our peace and well-being. And finally, we have the imprecatory psalms. In this case, sometimes they're called the cursing psalms. They can be kind of troubling because they actually express a desire that God would enact vengeance toward someone else, an enemy who's deeply hurt us, whether an individual or a group of people. So how does that fit in our prayer life? Well, certainly we don't want to seek revenge for other people, but if we're experiencing great anger, these psalms are expressions of anger, and so it can be helpful of processing through the anger that we're feeling by using psalms like these. So as you can see, I've listed a number of these psalms that you can look up, and I encourage you to pray with. Another source of prayer that we can use from the scriptures is that of the book of Lamentations. Lamentations was written following the time when the Babylonians came in, took over Israel, destroying Jerusalem and the temple. And so Lamentations really is an expression of sorrow and of prayer to God in response to the destruction of Jerusalem. And so you find within this book 5 different chapters, 5 different laments, crying over what has occurred to them. And so it combines confession of sin, grief over the suffering and humiliation that they've gone through, and also a submission not just to, deserve punishment for not always following God, but also to having a great faith that God's love and power can restore us. And we don't have to just live in sorrow, but we can see something good and have future flourishing even in the midst of sorrow. So really encourage you to look into the book of Lamentations for something also to help us to process through our grieving. A third prayer that I want to propose to us to utilize is that of the 7 Sorrows of Mary devotion. This came especially to my mind since St. Mary of the Seven Dolores in Osmond is part of our parish grouping. And so this devotion to our sorrowful mother originated in the 13th century, and it recalls the sorrows of the Virgin Mother of God that she endured in compassion for the suffering and death of her divine Son. And so you can find various meditations on each of these sorrows, and then you pray them on a rosary. Instead of praying 10 Hail Marys, you pray 7 Hail Marys for each of these 7 sorrows of our Blessed Mother. So these are 3 examples of some kinds of prayers that we can utilize in helping us to process through what we can internally be experiencing as we go through this pastoral planning, and to be able to work through the tasks of life.